Welcome. Today I will be paraphrasing, summarizing, and sharing for the January 18th Al-Anon readings in Courage to Change and a Little Time for Myself. We'll begin with the Serenity Prayer and 3 mindful breaths. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I will take a moment and look this over. The question of the day is, how has active participation in Al-Anon enhanced my recovery? The passage begins with this person describing how the tools in Al-Anon have helped them get better. This person says they sponsor others to stay connected to people on a much deeper level than most ordinary daily interactions are, which is so true. The relationship between sponsor and sponsee is so deep and so close. The passage goes on to say that this person pushes themselves to share at meetings because they are afraid of criticism and public speaking. So they push themselves to share at meetings, and they chair meetings for the practice of putting themselves in front of people. And this experience gives them more confidence. They feel happier and more connected. Today's reminder talks about how being in service makes amazing positive changes in our lives despite whatever challenges we're dealing with. And the quote is from Paths to Recovery. So it's saying that participating in Al-Anon is service, and it helps us recover. So active participation in Al-Anon makes, for me, a huge difference in between just like passively attending the meetings, which is in itself a huge step forward for someone who's new to the program. To just like go to a meeting is a huge big deal. The experience is so much more amplified, was so much more amplified for me once I began sharing. I think my first share was actually with just one person. It was at the beginning of a meeting. It was the first person I saw. I talked to that person, and I'm pretty sure that's the only thing I said that whole meeting, was just that to that one person before and maybe after the meeting, but just one-to-one. I didn't share. But the more open I became, I just thought of something funny. So first I said nothing, then I started sharing, and eventually I chaired a meeting. But this is pretty funny because the first time I chaired a meeting, I was so nervous that I actually wrote a script. I read from a script. Not like the meeting opening and the meeting closing, like everything I was going to say, my entire share, I had written out ahead of time like a speech because I was incredibly uncomfortable and nervous about speaking in front of the people at my meeting. And it wasn't the people and it wasn't the meeting, it was all about me and my insecurities, but that's how I got around it. And everyone was so gentle and patient with me. Such a beautiful thing. So, active participation, and the more I participate, the more I feel connected, part of everything in Al-Anon, which is a great feeling. I was the treasurer, I was the alternate group rep. I still, I volunteer to be the timer. I read the steps at the beginning of the meeting. I chaired a meeting last week. It actually was the week before now, I think. It was. It was a little over a week ago now. But all those things help strengthen my connection with my program and ultimately help me in my recovery. Moving on. I'm going to read this. Wow. This is about our motives. This is about not doing for others what they could do for themselves. This is about not interfering with the natural course of events. Learning, I don't think, does this passage ever talk about the word detachment? I don't think it ever mentions the word detachment. It starts off by talking about how focusing on ourselves seemed like an insensitive, selfish thing when this person first came into program. And that they quickly realized that what they thought was helping was actually not helpful, but actually keeping the person who was suffering in their loop of like kind of self-destruction. For example, covering bad checks, making excuses for the person, not having them face the consequences of their own actions was keeping them from getting opportunities to want to change. And then this person realized that the reason why they felt so helpless unless they were helping is because unless they were doing something, taking some kind of active step, was because they had their own anxiety, which I think is so common, so common. Me, I am naturally a very anxiety-ridden person. I've worked, continue to work, have worked very, very, can't think of a word except hard. I've worked very hard to manage my anxiety and figure out what's bringing on anxiety, how I can break that thought pattern when it happens. So again, in today's reminder talks about checking our motives and how a sponsor can help us to determine what our motives are. And it says that really the best thing we can do to help our loved ones is to take care of ourselves and let them live their lives. And it doesn't say this, but in my mind, treating them with love and compassion, but letting them figure things out, like helping them when they really want help, but not helping them to do something that's going to hurt themselves. The quote is from Detachment, and it says, in Al-Anon, we learn not to create a crisis and also not to prevent one if it's a natural consequence. Fascinating. Wow, what a great passage. It's got no marks or anything, but that's a good one. That's a really good one. We'll close out with the Serenity Prayer and 3 mindful breaths. Here we go. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Sending you love. Take care.